We're reading from the word of Genesis, chapter 15, verse 1 till verse 3. And the word says, After this, Abram had a vision and heard the Lord say to him, Do not be afraid, Abram. I will shield you from anger and give you a great reward. But Abram answered, Sovereign Lord, what good will your reward do me, since I have no children? My only heir is Eliezer of Damascus. You have given me no children, and one of my slaves will inherit my property. See, God spoke to Abraham knowing what Abraham's fears were. And this is my understanding of this text, is that God knows what our fears are. And God, says to Abraham, I will shield you from anger. Meaning God knows that Abraham is angry at the fact that he doesn't have he doesn't have an heir to inherit his property. He doesn't have an heir to inherit, the hard work that he has done. He doesn't have anyone to share it with. He doesn't have anyone to leave it with that he deems worthy. And God says, you know what? Don't be afraid. I know. I know. I know. I know. God is telling Abraham, I know. I know. So the thing that we also need to understand is that God knows our fears. God knows that we are angry at the fact that there are certain things that are not working out. God knows. And therefore he is shielding us. But are we allowing God to shield us from the anger, from the pain of not having, of lacking, of not seeing things working out? Are we allowing God to shield us? Or are we continuously worrying about the fact that things might not work out? And this is why God speaks to Abraham first. This is why God comes to Abraham and tells him, don't be afraid. I will shield you from anger and give you a great reward. Meaning God is telling Abraham that don't worry about this. I will give it to you, and I will give more. Some of us have forgotten the promises that God has made us. We forget along the way the promises that God has made to us. We forget along the way the prayers that we have said. God has already answered the prayer. It's just time. Time needs to pass in order for us to get what God is going to bless us with. A child cannot inherit a home unless the child has grown into a full adult in order for them to be able to take care of that house. If you give a baby a home now, what is the child going to do with that home? Because the baby doesn't know anything of it. The child needs to grow. Therefore, time needs to pass by before the house is theirs. They just need to grow. And that is something that we as Christians ought to do. And we need to understand that we have to grow. It is already yours. You just need to understand how to manage it. You have to learn how to take care of it. You have to learn to take care of yourself. God is wanting us to grow first before He can give us the things that He has blessed us with. The blessing is there. The prayer has been answered. God knows. He knows what you want. He knows what your heart's desires. He knows. The only thing is that we need to have faith in Him. And we need to trust that with time, God will give us what it is that we prayed for. God will give us what it is that He can see we can handle also. God's not going to give you something if He knows that you will destroy it or it will destroy you. God had to make Abraham grow out first before He blessed him with the son. God had to test Abraham's faith first before he gave him a son. And even when Abraham received his son, God had to remove this extreme love, this idolization out of Abraham's heart for his son, so that Abraham, at the end of the day, his heart can belong to God. Some of you guys have received what God has blessed you with, and you have idolized it. You've received the marriage, and now you think you are better. You don't even pray to God anymore. You don't even give thanks to God anymore. And yet, when you were single and when you were lonely, you were busy praying to God. But now, when you have what you have, you no longer pray to God. You no longer want to sacrifice to God. Abraham was willing to sacrifice his only son to God. That was God testing his faith. I think the word of the day is God will shield us, even if it is from ourselves. God had to shield Abraham so that he may not idolize his son, so that he may not sin against God. God knew Abraham wanted a son. God knew Abraham desired to have a son, but God said, first, let me shield you from this anger that you have. Let me remind you of the promises that I've made to you. Because you have forgotten, let me remind you to have faith in me. There's another thing, we forget to have faith and trust in God.